All right, welcome to Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie.
Hello.
And with us, as occasionally, fan favorite Kyle McLachlan. Kyle.
Yo, is this the right time to tell them they got to put up with me for 2 weeks because I'm going to be on this? On consecutive weeks, right?
Yeah, we sort of finagled a double Kyle appearance out of him. There's more Irish slang for you, Kyle. Because we were on his show, Phil and I both, to talk about the fight that we are also going to talk about more briefly here, that being the heavyweight boxing showdown between Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk. You should check out Kyle's show to hear that. It is called Combat Chronicles, and it's very good.
Thank you.
Kyle actually puts on a sort of pretense of being professional.
Phil, I didn't believe him. Phil, I didn't believe him, mate. He didn't mean that. It really pained him to have to say that. I know you could sense it as well. He's like, it's very good. Yeah.
Listen to Kyle's show. It's nice. He's nice.
Thanks.
He's good.
Thanks. Yeah.
But I do like hearing you over there, Kyle, because you sort of, when you're in this role, as a guest, you're just, mayhem. You're pure mayhem. And over there, you sort of put on this facade of being like a professional, organized fellow who's keeping the show moving,
How do you know it's not the other way around?
Oh, yeah.
How do you know that the Heavy Hands podcast isn't where Kyle comes to just like take his metaphorical shirt off and relax? Maybe he's always just an extremely professional man. Actually, no, we've seen him on that. I take it back.
Yeah, I don't think it's just my malign influence that gets Kyle to act up. But we're very happy to have Kyle here, and we are talking about some more boxing.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Kyle. I think, by the way, we got other things to talk about later in the show. There is still UFC events are happening. Next week, Edson Barboza is fighting Lerone Murphy. Kind of cool to see Lerone Murphy actually in like a big main event fight, getting some momentum. That guy's been good the entire time he's been in the UFC, and it seems like it's been quite a while already. And last week we had what turned out to be a pretty entertaining card, as they often do, but which was just an absolutely dog shit lineup for a travel card. That was main evented by Derek Lewis and Rodrigo Nascimento. We're going to talk about that stuff later. First up, Phil, I think people seemed to enjoy it when we talked about Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney on the show.
Cool.
So that's good. We can talk more about boxing, a little more safety there. Maybe if Kyle, it was because that fight.
Did you talk about how I was right about Devin Haney and you were wrong? No, fuck this shit. We're not doing this right now. Did we talk about how you were wrong about Devin Haney and me and Phil were right about him? Because we haven't spoken since that happened. I came on the podcast, last year, 18 months ago.
Yeah. As I recall...
why do you love Devin Haney so much? I'm telling you, he does not... Go on.
As I recall,
fucking podcast. Go on.
As I recall, what came up... and it was absolutely full of me rescinding every good thing I ever said about Devin Haney. It made me hate him, that fight. But, as I recall, you came up in the context of you, approaching me on social media being like, oh, all right, bruv, is Devin Haney still good then? And I said, Kyle, did you pick Devin Haney to win that fight? And you said, well, yes, of course, but yeah. So you're not as smart as you think, Mr. McLachlan. You were fucking wrong too.
To be fair, Ed, you had to pick Devin Haney in that fight. Ryan Garcia was basically just bouncing around the room, going blah, 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 and was obviously completely off his rocker. There was no reason to assume he was going to beat anyone.
I think that's also part of why it appealed, and hopefully this is heavyweight boxing, so it'll have a similar appeal to our audience. That one appealed because it was, as some listeners said, it was stupid in a way that is usually reserved for MMA fights.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really stupid fight.
Yep.
It was like more determined by the hilarious mistakes both guys were making and their inability to capitalize on each other's mistakes than it was by anyone looking particularly good.
Yep.
Fun.
So, yeah, I mean, this one's already off to a good start with John Fury splitting his own forehead open on a utterly unfazed teenager.
Yeah, we've got some antics for sure.
And then afterwards, he said, "Shall I find the direct quote of what John Fury said? Because I've got it here stashed.
Yeah.
If you give me 2 seconds, I'll tell you my best John Fury impression. What he said, he had butted this lad that, as Phil said, completely unfazed. There was a bit of backwards and forwards between the two camps. Fury versus Usyk. Fury turned around, John Fury that is. He's a 59-year-old man. He's done some prison time, bird, as you might call it, around my way for, I think he bit someone's nose off or something in a street fight. He was a middling domestic heavyweight back in the 80s. He's well known as a very tough guy, but he sees what appears to be a 15-year-old small Ukrainian lad in front of him, cheering for his countrymen, cheering for someone he personally knows as part of his team, and decides he's going to lay the nut on him. And as Phil said, the lad was completely unfazed. And afterwards, John Fury said, "Sincere apologies to everybody involved. It's just the way we are. Emotions and tensions are running high. He was a very disrespectful fella. If you come close in a fighting man's space, you're going to cop for something. What matters to me is respect for my son, and he wasn't showing any of it. He mentioned my son, and that was it, so he had to have it. It doesn't bother me, bleeding. It's what we live for. We're fighting people. That's a regular occurrence to me." So John Fury's basically saying he's constantly bleeding wherever he goes. Okay.
That's a tremendous John Fury impression.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
My son will beat you up, Phil McKenzie. He'll beat any man, born from his mother.
Yeah, it wasn't quite as good as my impression of Kyle.
He's value for money, John Fury. So, you sounded like Johnny Depp and Sweeney Todd, mate. So don't fucking give me that shit.
I was trying to
do me like you're doing a David Bowie impression.
I always try to do Kyle as a sort of Vinnie Jones type of character, Oh, it's me, God, Kyle.
If only.
It's Kyle, innit?
No.
Yeah, but I mean, if you haven't listened to that one, Kyle, you should. I did absolutely loathe Devin Haney. I mistook him for Andre Ward. I think that's how I coped with the reversal in how I felt about him as a fighter. I'm sorry, I mistook you for Andre Ward. You, sir, are no Andre Ward.
He weren't that.
No.
Definitely not. But
anyway, derailed as usual, we are here to talk about the heavyweights, Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk. And Kyle, our audience is more of an MMA audience. They were open to our last boxing discussion, but keep that in mind. These people are used to watching the exciting, multi-dimensional, anything could happen sport of MMA. So, boxing is, what is it?
It's quite a broad question. Just preface my own response to that inane line of questioning. But my own podcast is also an MMA podcast. I don't want anyone to think I'm just a random boxing guy. I'm a big fan of boxing, but MMA, kickboxing, Muay Thai, it's all the same to me. I love people getting their heads stoved in. But what is boxing? I don't think it's what is boxing, but what is this match? And this match is a really this match has got every possibility of being an epic. It's got a small possibility of being a stinker. But most importantly, it's very important. It's, for me, the most important bout in boxing since Mayweather Pacquiao in terms of what it means to the all-time standings, in terms of how momentous it could be. In terms of the fighters involved, it's very much like Hagler Hearns in terms of the journey these gentlemen have been on to finally get to this fight, the delay between the fight first being mooted and it eventually happening, and the potential for fireworks. And certainly in terms of what these men both bring to the table, it's one of those fights where both man seems to be somewhat of a mirror image to the other, and both men have never really actually faced someone like the other guy, so it's quite hard to pick. Not in the way that, to give a more recent example, Bud Crawford versus Errol Spence was. You had enough of a sort of stylistic analog from other bouts that you could kind of figure out how this fight might go. But with this one, we've got a couple of examples, sure, but I still think there's enough that we haven't seen that makes it a particularly difficult fight, if not to pick, then to sort of envision how it's going to look and the ebb and flow on the night. So I just think, you're going to look at both these guys and think, they're stylists, they're boxers, they're both somewhat defensively orientated, they're punch pickers, etc., and think, maybe it's not for me. But I think this is for all combat sports fans, MMA, boxing or otherwise. This is basically as good as it gets. Much as Tenshin versus Takeru was in the kickboxing world 2 years ago, the biggest fight that can be made in all of combat sports, Fury versus Usyk. That's it.
Yeah.
Didn't really mention this on your podcast, but it's got to be a really personal fight for you as well, because
yes,
you were one of the guys that was really first on the train of both these guys.
It's true.
You know, back when Fury was the mean guy who punched himself in the face, and back when, Usyk was just, quote unquote, just a cruiserweight. You've been on that, you were on the Usyk will dismantle most of the heavyweight strain for a long time, and you were one of the people, along with Conor, who picked him to beat Klitschko.
Yeah, I did. What's interesting, and obviously I've been a boxing fan since 98, 99, hardcore since 2005, thereabouts, 2006 maybe. But this is the first real super fight where I actually basically followed both guys either from their pro debut or before. I'd heard about Fury prior to turning pro, but was absolutely on board from the first fight with some dips along the way. But Usyk, very much on board since the amateur days, and picked him to not only clean up at cruiserweight, but even prior to his cruiserweight debut, I knew that he was destined to be a heavyweight due to the fact that he fought a super heavyweight in the World Series of Boxing, which was essentially the top amateurs fighting under modified pro rules. Mm-hmm. And Usyk beat all the bigger guys. He beat guys that we now know today, like Joe Joyce. He beat an Italian heavyweight, Mogduno, I believe his name was, who wasn't a great amateur, but he was like a 15-0 pro who was in this competition. So even as a cruiserweight-sized fighter, Usyk was able to beat sort of Euro-level, unbeaten pro bigger heavyweights, Joe Joyce and Majidov, who the Azerbaijani, who had given Joshua a good fight in the Worlds, and Nistor, who was a big southpaw, who actually stopped Joshua in the amateur. So I looked at it, I just thought, in comparison to his peers and other bigger fighters, Usyk's output and comfort with these guys is comparable, if not more so, to the bigger guys and bigger names like AJ. And I thought, he's going to be a terror. Did I think he'd be this good? Not sure. But I've loved him since day dot. And this fight, as Phil said, is a lot riding on this, a lot stakes on this, and I could be a very upset boy come Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, just to give a brief rundown to those who are truly unacquainted, Usyk is a division climber, as you might have just gathered. Started much smaller, worked his way up to heavyweight pretty gradually, and is he still a teammate of Vasily Lomachenko? Or, I mean, for a long time they were. I don't know if they still train together. I
don't think Usyk works with Anatoly Lomachenko, Loma's dad, anymore. But obviously they were in the same Olympic team.
Yeah.
And he has, as a professional, had Papa Lomachenko in his corner at times. So they are still best friends.
Yeah. But that is the lineage, and Usyk is very much, to a degree, what you might expect to see if you thought, what if there was a big Vasily Lomachenko? In comparison to so many other fighters of his size, he's very quick. He relies a lot on defense and footwork. But I would say more consistently than Lomachenko, he is a volume puncher as well. I think he is pathologically aggressive. Lomachenko will definitely work himself up to that mode. And sometimes, I mean, there's nothing like Lomachenko when he's like in his flow. But that is kind of Usyk's style broadly, is being like a Wolverine, a guy who will use his defense, will use his footwork to cut angles and then overwhelm his opponent with blistering combinations of punches. He's really dangerous with both hands. He's very quick. He is an aggressive fighter by nature. And then Tyson Fury, of course, is a giant. He's absolutely huge. I don't know what he is, like 6'6", 6'7".
He's billed as 6'9", but I think he's about 6'7", yeah.
Yeah, he's huge. He's on his way to being 7 feet tall, and well on his way to being 7 feet wide. He has been spotty with his fitness at times, but he is somebody who has really dominated the vast majority of heavyweights he's faced, because just like in MMA, most heavyweights in boxing are kind of one-dimensional, are pretty slow, and really struggle to adjust. And Fury, in contrast to those fighters, is a very solid boxer. He's surprisingly quick and agile for his size. He has an excellent jab. He's flexible. He can fight out of both stances and at a lot of different ranges. He is, of course, very tricky from long range with his massive frame and long arms. But he is just as good at fighting on the inside, where most heavyweights have absolutely no idea what to do, and he just easily outmaneuvers them and picks them off with short punches. So that's kind of the style clash. It is Usyk versus, in some ways, the most heavyweight that he will have fought yet, the biggest guy he will have fought yet. But also as a man who came up to heavyweight and has largely dominated the people he's fought there so far. Even with a very good showing from Anthony Joshua, particularly in their second fight, there's still no question that Oleksandr Usyk outclassed him in that fight. So those are kind of the bare bones of the matchup we're looking at here. Big giant guy, probably past his best, but it's impossible to say for sure, versus ferocious little technician. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Kyle, I mean, you know, what do you think? You had us talk about this on your show. What's your feeling about Tyson Fury's condition at present? Of course, we talked about his fight with Ngannou here on Heavy Hands. We weren't all that impressed with him. How did you feel about that? And does that indicate any kind of arc that he's experiencing right now?
It could do, and it could. There could be even more to it than just the Ngannou fight. And obviously, you know, talk about how to get in the MMA fans. You know, Usyk is only 2 degrees of separation away from Ngannou, whichever way you look at it, because he's fought AJ and who splattered Ngannou, and he's fought Fury, who arguably lost to Ngannou, but definitely looked bad against him. But for me, it's not just the Ngannou fight; it's the fact that was 10 months removed from the first Chisora fight, where Fury looked blistering early and then sort of eased off, and there was talk of they're friends outside the ring. Well, I didn't see friends in the first 3 rounds. I saw Fury looking very good, then sort of running out of ideas, and Chisora actually getting close to him with one of the most basic approaches I've seen. I posited to a good friend of mine, Rob Tebbett, who's the editor of Boxing News, who you can also hear on my podcast, on my Usyk Fury preview and prediction pod, that actually Fury looked really good against Dillian Whyte. That was the last time. It was about 2 years ago now, nearly, or thereabouts. And Rob sort of refuted that and said, yeah, but Dillian Whyte was made for him. And then I started thinking back to the conversation you and myself and Phil had, Connor. It was about the third Wilder fight, which Fury clearly didn't take it seriously, because he pissed the second fight and thought, you know what, don't need to put any effort in for this, much as he did in the Ngannou fight. And even though he won that fight and knocked Wilder out, he got hit with some very big blows. And I started to think about, right, okay, much like Ricky Hatton, ballooning up in weight and losing it again, shows great dedication, but it's not good for your legs. And I started to think about Gerald McLellan versus Julian Jackson. And Gerald McLellan, for those that don't know, was not fatally injured, but permanently injured by Nigel Benn in their bout. But prior to that, he'd faced Julian Jackson twice, who was a light middleweight and heavyweight. And basically, McLellan was one of the sort of first generation of 90s weight cutters. And he was a massive guy, probably around at cruiserweight, 190-pound cruiserweight, cutting every bit of water out of his body to fight Julian Jackson. Now, if you're Julian Jackson's size and he hit you, you didn't tend to stay up. And that was right, because obviously your brain would go into recovery mode. And the hardest puncher in boxing history, in my opinion, put your lights out and they get the doctors in and you could go home safe. But Gerald McLellan, by virtue of being so large and so big, was able to absorb a lot of shots from Julian Jackson and get into a firefight with him. And I think, you know, after those fights was when he started blinking in the gym, and the late great Emmanuel Stewart said, I'm not going to train you anymore. You're not well. And I started to think about that for Tyson Fury. He fought Deontay Wilder 3 times. We all think that he beat him all 3 times. Obviously, he stopped him twice, but we all believe that Tyson Fury was robbed in the first fight. I know that for a fact. But I start to think to myself, it's not really safe for a human being to fight Deontay Wilder 3 times, is it? How much does that take out of you? How much does it take out of you to balloon up in weight, lose the weight, live the lifestyle Tyson Fury's led, then fight Francis Ngannou and take some big shots in that as well. And I start to think, condition-wise, he can lose as much weight as he wants, and he looks to be fighting fit for this fight. I just wonder that after, 30 pro bouts, 15 years, and some pretty tough fights against some big punchers, how much is enough?
Yeah. 15 years is a long time, any combat sport. I mean, really only the greatest of the all-time greats can sort of keep even a good shadow of their prime form going that deep into their careers.
Yeah, it is a weird thing, like, the extension of primes and so on, because, you tend to think of it as being, it's favoring the guys who are like sort of RDA, just the eternal professionals who never let anything get to them and so on. But it isn't actually always the case, obviously. If you look at things like boxing, guys like Archie Moore Roberto Duran was famously always having fights with his team, back when he was younger over weight control and what he was allowed to eat and so on.
Yeah.
And stuffing his face whenever he was, allowed to. But yeah, I mean, it is just, so I think most of what leads to really big to impressive longevity in the sport is mostly just pure blind luck. But the one thing you can say is that pinging back and forth in terms of weight, getting fat, losing it again, all that kind of stuff probably ain't great.
Yeah, he doesn't look great. I mean, that's the thing. It's not just a guess. Fury, he hasn't looked great. He's looked lethargic, and I really like or rather, I mean, I don't like, but I feel it's appropriate, the Julian Jackson thing. Tyson Fury has not responded well to adversity in the ring as he used to do. Mm-hmm. He had some very tough fights earlier in his career and sprinkled throughout. Even including to extent that first fight with Deontay Wilder. We all agree it was a Fury win, but it was a kind of a close, indecisive bout through long portions where it was Fury picking up a round with 3 cleaner jabs. And was otherwise.
It's also just one of the most, visibly incredible, recoveries from a knockdown.
Yeah.
You're ever going to see, the Undertaker sort of sitting bolt upright kind of thing.
Yeah. Speaking of Archie Moore, reminded me of Archie Moore, Yvonne Durrell, where Moore got fucking flattened early on in that fight, and it is honestly remarkable that he was even able to get back to his feet, and then of course came back much later to knock Durrell out. It was a very impressive thing from Fury. That does seem to have kind of been missing in his most recent fights. I know he came back to stop Chisora late, but he seemed to run out of energy very quickly, and he seemed, I don't know, timid. He had to summon the nerve to finish that fight as strongly as he did. And it took, I think, a visible effort. And then, of course, against Ngannou, who in so many ways is one of the crappiest boxers he's fought. Physically imposing, fast, surprisingly good, certainly, based on how Fury reacted, but he didn't seem very mentally resilient in that fight. He seemed very easily discouraged. And that is a really bad sign, I think, for any fighter. It's something that Usyk has always had and has not yet even seemed to come close to losing. It's the ability to take a hard shot, to even lose a whole round, to feel the momentum swing against him, and then to center himself in the corner, meditate with some little Cossack prayer, and then come out ferocious. Last 3 rounds in the rematch with Anthony Joshua, Usyk was on fire. He was just so determined to bring that fight home and to keep the pressure on AJ and to respond every time he got hit with, 3 times as many punches. That is a bad thing to see in a fighter. It could be Fury just not caring and not taking these fights seriously, and I can't imagine anything could make him care more than a fight like this. or a fight with like AJ, like a real big tentpole event. But I don't know. Like there is a little bit of use it or lose it in combat sports as well. And I'm not sure how long you can go just sort of not being particularly interested in fights, if that is part of it. And then, again, just lose all the weight, bounce back, and really look like your old self. Which is not even answering the question of would Fury's old self have had an easy time with a guy like Usyk, which I think we all kind of agree, no. It would have been a very tricky style matchup. Here's a smaller, much faster, higher output fighter who has excellent defense and footwork and can cut angles in a way that may make Tyson Fury not look so surprisingly quick and agile. He's always been quick and agile for a heavyweight. Usyk is just downright quick for any big man. And again, it's angular footwork. It's drawing you into an exchange and then taking like a cut step to the side, pivoting, and then piling in as you try to reset and reface him. It's just mentally taxing. You have to be constantly on, I think, to fight a guy like Usyk, or he will expose you. And it's just even more troubling a matchup given how Fury has been looking.
Yeah. And yeah, I think like another thing we didn't necessarily mention on the podcast, but which I'm sure lots of people are aware of, is that like Fury is himself obviously like he's definitely one of these guys who is a student of the game, follows what's going on and knows what's happening. He is engaged in like boxing as a sport and as a business and so on. He's not someone who just fights whoever's in front of him or whatever. But and it is notable that for much of the run up to this fight, and why it's so not necessarily so surprising, but why it's so gratifying that we're actually getting it now, is that it really made it look like he wanted absolutely nothing to do with Oleksandr Usyk for a really long time.
True.
Yeah. I think with good reason. I just think it's Kyle, I mean, we talked about this a little bit with you. You know more about it than either of us. Tell us about that fight Fury had years and years ago with Steve Cunningham, USS Cunningham.
Yes, Steve Cunningham, USS Cunningham, was a former cruiserweight champ in a sort of semi-decent but not great era, in my opinion. A lot of people think that David Hayes, sorry to go on a tangent, but just to contextualise him a bit, a lot of people think David Hayes was one of the greatest cruiserweights of all time. And for me, that whole sort of era when you had Sean Mutt, Warmack, Hay, O'Neill Bell, Enzo Macronelli, then on to Thomas Adamek and Cunningham as well, wasn't a particularly great era, in my opinion. It was a bunch of decent fighters rather than world-class. Well, let me rephrase. There's a load of world-class fighters, but no elites. And I count David Hay amongst that as well. I don't think David Hay was ever an elite fighter. He was definitely an absolute elite puncher.
Usyk's cruiserweight era was more stacked by far, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think Usyk's the greatest cruiserweight. He's the greatest, the easy differentiator. People say, who's greater, a cruiserweight, Holyfield or Usyk? Well, it's very easy. They're different divisions. Holyfield was the 190-pound great. That's what the cruiserweight limit was back then. Mm-hmm. And Usyk is the 200-pound great, which is what the cruiserweight limit was in his era. But again, I'll digress. Cunningham was a good fighter. He was pretty slippery. He was an okay puncher, good jab, a good sort of well-rounded fighter. Nothing great, no great shakes. Had a bit of an eggy chin, but had big balls, Mm-hmm. And certainly, if you want to get a good indication of what he was like, watch his up and down fight with Adamek, where he gives as good as he gets, but unfortunately, he just gets sort of beaten to a standstill at points. However, when Tyson Fury fought him, I certainly didn't think he was going to cause him much in the way of issues. I really rated Fury at that point as a prospect. Felt like a pretty good prospect matchmaking fight. Putting him with a veteran guy, a well-known guy who's got some issue. You're going to cause him some issues with sort of speed and whatnot, but generally is beatable. You're going to pick up a name on your record, but you don't put a guy in with iron chin, big puncher, great engine straight away. You go, right, put him in with a fast guy who hasn't got the best chin, but put him with a puncher who's got a terrible gas tank. That's what you do when you're building prospects out. And Cunningham was name fighter. I wouldn't say he was slick, but he was somewhat skilled, and yes, athletically gifted, but as I say, not a big puncher by any means, although he could clip you, and didn't have a great chin. First round, Fury got really pissed off with Cunningham, started sort of trying to push him around, and it was almost immediately as the second round started, Fury just wasn't looking. He's trying to punch, sort of jab with Cunningham, and Cunningham just goes, right, I know what I've got to do with this guy. If I'm going to get anywhere near him, as he overextends and overshoots the jab, I've got to throw with him. And he threw the best punch I think he's ever thrown, an overhand right, out of Fury's line of sight, which is what he always struggled with early on in his career against Pikage, which I think was an overhead right as well, and Nikolai Furfer, which I think was a right cross. And Cunningham, who just caught him coming in and buzzed an overhand right off his dome that completely flattened Fury. And Fury, you can tell straight away, he put his hands on his head, he knows where he is, much as Jack Johnson did, covered his eyes from the sun when Jess Willer dropped him some 100 or 110 years ago or whatnot. Fury knew where he was. He got up, he got his legs underneath him, but he found Cunningham a tricky task until he started walking him down again, and rather infamously framed off with his big forearm and swiped him like a bear and sparked him out using what not really classed as a sticky jab, but actually sort of not even a single collar tie, just sort of put his hand on him like grabbing a midget at arm's length and just fucking swatted him as hard as he could, using somewhat illegal tactics.
Yeah, a little holding and hitting,
Fury,
that's
that was
fine.
how he adjusted. Holding and hitting, sure, but I mean, it was rough tactics. He did what he had to do in order to close the distance on the smaller man, but Cunningham made him look particularly bad, and Fury is on record as saying that was his toughest fight. Admittedly, before the Wilder fights, I believe he made that statement. It was to Joe Rogan, so it might have been before the first Wilder fight, I think. But yeah, he is on record to this day saying that Cunningham was his hardest fight, and Cunningham's no Oleksandr Usyk.
Yeah, as I recall, the overhand right was the kind of thing that just works on tall guys in general. Cunningham came in like a crouch, or I guess Fury came onto him. Cunningham got low, and Fury like reached down with the jab to try to find his head. And it's awkward when you're that tall. Sometimes if a guy's good at just getting low to actually land clean punches, he reached down for him. And then Cunningham swings this right hand, and you can watch it in slow motion. Fury's eyes are like following Cunningham's head. He has no idea that right hand is coming. It whips around the side and over the shoulder, and just nails him. Catches him standing way too tall and way closer than he thought he was. I think he overextended because he was trying to find Cunningham with this jab. Certainly the kind of thing I think a little compact, defensively sound fighter, who, by the way, has a much better chin than Steve Cunningham ever did, like Usyk can replicate. You know, like, I don't know. I just think it's been a long. It's
not completely analogous, of course, because
no.
Cunningham was an orthodox fighter.
Yeah.
But Usyk's not. But Usyk's really good at sort of jabbing over and under, and he's particularly good at sort of showing you the left hand, popping you with a short right, and then pivoting round. Yeah. Sort of when I watch Usyk, I kind of think when you read those reports, what Harry Greb was like when he'd hit you, then he'd be behind you. We've not got no footage to compare, but I get the feeling that's sort of what Usyk's like nightmare-wise, and I can see him just sort of befuddling Fury at times by, as you say, drawing that lead, getting out of Fury's sort of line of sight, hitting him, and Fury not really knowing which part of him to follow. Now, we said on my own podcast, and we all agreed that Fury is definitely a much improved fighter since the Cunningham fight. But yeah, certainly you've got to look at what the evidence you got, and the Cunningham fight and Fury's own words with what he struggles with stylistically in a fighter. Take Cunningham out of it. He was slippery. I didn't know what to do with him. All the things that usually work for me didn't work against him. That's Fury's own words, paraphrased somewhat, but.
And Cunningham
who does that sound like? Sounds like Usyk.
Cunningham's kind of, we have to go with him because, like, he's kind of the last guy who's remotely analogous to Usyk. Largely, Fury has been outfoxing big, sluggish morons, like heavyweights. And Usyk does not fight like your typical heavyweight. Not at all. He fights like a cruiser.
Outside of Vlad, obviously he took Vlad thing is Vladimir Klitschko, I don't know if it's why you picked him, Conor, but the reason I always picked Fury was if he had to take Vlad's jab away, and without the jab, Vlad was always unsure of himself. He always needed that.
Yep.
He's not going to be able to do that with Usyk, who feints constantly, who works, as I say, level changes all the time, and as I say, it's coming at an angle that Fury's going to struggle with, whereas Vlad is very much on eyesight, on perfect level with Fury. It was easier for him to see the shots. He'd always shoot the right straight through the shoulder, all the things that Fury you can see and deal with, parry and whatnot. Whereas Usyk's not like that at all. He's is this the right phrase? Like a whirling dervish? Is that a phrase?
Yeah, sure.
Where have I pulled that from? But that's what he's like, right? He just doesn't stop, and he gives you all these different looks and pivots in and out, and footwork and cutting an angle, as you said. He'll double up the jab, he'll go over, he'll go under, and work the body. And the much like Pacquiao, he drop the right shoulder, throw the left hand over, and you think he's dipping for the right hand.
Yeah.
He's just constantly giving you different looks, and I can just see it tiring Fury out. I haven't made a pick yet, but I can see that being more tiring for Fury than having to deal with someone like Wilder, who's obviously a terrifying presence. But you sort of, and is awkward and explosive and erratic and hard to judge. But Fury could put him in a box; he could contain him. Whereas Usyk, I think, a little bit more difficult to contain due to the sort of depth of his skill set.
Yeah, he's just a really complete offensive fighter. I mean, every single trick you can think of, whether we're talking about the angles with his footwork, his ability to feint, how he puts his combinations together, picking all the targets that are available to him, but also down to really subtle things like just changing the rhythm of his punches, throwing in a little half beat before he actually throws something powerful, throwing shots away to create an opening. Like, I always think of guys like Usyk, like he's like a Wolverine to me. It's like, a Wolverine can kill a moose. Moose is a hell of a lot bigger. Wolverine just get up in its face and confuse the hell out of it and rip its throat out. And I hope we see a good-looking Fury, and I don't think it'll be quite that one-sided one way or the other. I think there are just advantages being as big and smothering as Fury can be. But I do expect Usyk to win. Phil, you also expect Usyk to win?
Yeah, I think so. It's the Cunningham fight. It's the Wallin fight, one where I think
Wallin.
You have to look at Wallin.
You Brits, you don't even try. God.
Oh, I'm so sorry, American person. You're so famous for your country's
I'm gonna eat a taco.
Pronunciation.
I'm gonna eat a taco and some pasta with Otto Wallin. Jesus Christ.
You done?
Yeah.
No. What was I going to say? Like the Wallin fight.
Thank you.
Is one where you can see, again, Fury is resorting to the clinch a lot and not really using his jab much to establish range, and he's kind of trying to close the open stance engagement into the clinch as much as he possibly can, which means that, again, like, if he keeps trying to do this, I think Usyk will keep just lighting him up on the way in. If he's not going to actually like engage with the jab game, I think Usyk will just start landing counter punches on him, and then the equation just has to be like, can Fury tire Usyk out just by clinching with him, like he could, like Wilder or Chisora or, for that matter, Wallin? Because I don't think that he can. Again, I'm willing to make that statement. I would make it perhaps less confidently if I believed more in Tyson Fury's physical and mental state. But yeah, I have to be like, I think it just looks like a really tough matchup for him. And I think, honestly, Fury maybe kind of always knew that.
Yeah.
And, and I just don't think he's in the right space to be able to take on a tough matchup like that. Again, he's still huge, fast, cardio, durability, mental toughness, all these things. But he has had. You cannot count Tyson Fury out, but it looks like a real tough one for him.
Yeah. And Kyle, you're still coyly refusing to make a pick, right?
I think Usyk's going to stop him.
Oh, okay. Spoilers. Make sure you
I did.
retroactively go back and listen to all.
No, it's different podcasts, man.
Okay.
On my own podcast, I'll go into. If anyone wants to listen to my own preview and prediction, I've basically covered the entire history of this fight and how we got to this moment, and obviously got different analysis from the guys as they touched on. We talked about some different talking points than some of the ones who went over here, and I've got other guests as well. So still think it's worth your time. But
for sure.
I think Usyk's going to stop Fury at this point. Do you want to hear why?
Yes, absolutely.
So my thing is that I think that, yes, as Phil said, I'm concerned about Fury's condition because I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, you look great physically, but then I consider you've probably lost your body weight in the last sort of 6 years. He was 30 odd stone, that's like 140 pounds. Then he keeps going up, probably has to lose 30 pounds every time he fights and whatnot. And I look at it, I think this guy's lost like over 200 pounds in the last 6 or 7 years. It's not good for you. Then I think about the tough fights, and I think about how he hasn't looked great for a while. But then I think about stressors, the kind of things that Fury can usually avoid in a fight because of how well rounded his game is.
Yeah.
And I think it's not always the biggest punches that stop you. George Foreman wasn't stopped by Ron Lyle. He wasn't stopped by Holyfield. Wasn't a big puncher, but certainly that was later on in his career. He wasn't stopped by Tommy Morrison, but he was stopped by Muhammad Ali. He wasn't stopped by Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier couldn't barely hit him. They don't put a dent in him, but he hit him with some shots.
Mm-hmm.
But he was stopped by Ali, and he was stopped by Ali because of the stress he was put under. And I think about Fury, and my main read concerns his safety blankets. Now, Fury has a number of safety blankets he reverts to. He always wins the lead hand battle, and this is the thing. Usually Fury is the more technical, the faster guy, the more versatile guy, yeah? Because of that, he tends to have it his own way when he fights to a certain level. Against Dillian White barely hit him. He just dominated the fight, and when he wanted to knock him out, kept giving the jab, seeing how he reacted. Oh, okay, drew the uppercut, bop, there you go, out you go, lights out. But when he gets to looks he doesn't like, as he did against Otto Wallin, for instance, or in the third Wilder fight when he wasn't in great shape.
Wilder. It's Wilder.
Go on. Good pronunciation, or
it's actually Deontay Wilder. I think you'll find.
Deontay Wilder. Big fan of it.
Danke.
But yeah, Fury, what he tends to do is, when he's having it at his own pace, he's fine, and when it's not at his own pace, he adapts. And I look at it and I think, well, he tends to win the lead hand battle, right? He's a superior and more active feinter in a fight. Mm-hmm. He leans on the clinch and he's superior on the inside, which I do think he still will be against Usyk, even if Usyk's not completely clueless there. Fury's a more consistent jabber than basically anyone he's ever faced outside of Vladimir Klitschko, but due to Fury being able to keep that at a certain distance, as we said earlier, he took that away from him a bit, because Vlad was quite sort of idiosyncratic in how he approached fights and the kind of things that needed to be on his terms, and obviously Fury, as we know, as you said about the Wilder fight, especially the first one, where he got basically put underground and all the coffin nails put in, he managed to come back and actually finish that fight stronger than Wilder did. He was punching Wilder around the ring at the end of that round. So he has a good work rate at a 12-round engine, even though we've seen him get a bit sloppy at times. So the way I see it, there's no way for him to hide in this fight, because Usyk now, he's going to fight him for lead hand position. He's a more active jabber. I don't think you said earlier that Usyk's faster. I think they're about as fast as each other, sort of pound for pound, and in actual literal sense. I think Fury's very, very fast, but he's as fast as him, or he's going to be able to be Wilder was fast, and able to catch Fury, but he didn't throw many punches.
Yeah.
I said on my own podcast, Wilder, a fighter after Phil's heart, he's like the Chito Vera of heavyweight boxing. He doesn't do much. When he does something, it's fucking amazing. It's brutal, it's spectacular, but he spends a lot of time faffing about. I think, Usyk, he can win the lead hand battle. He's a more exaggerated feinter than even Fury, and he can jab with him. He can out jab him, even with the size difference. He's as good or superior at drawing the openings with the feints. He has as good, if not a better engine. What's Fury going to do when he tries to push the pace late, and Fury is seeing a guy in front of him who can match him? That's going to be disheartening, right? Much like when a big puncher hits someone with an iron chin, they don't go nowhere. They start to get tired more easily. They start to unravel, not having an effect. Tires you out. I do think Fury's got the advantage there, but he's not that useless in the clinch. I think the big question is, is Fury going to over-target the body? Because people seem to think that Usyk's big weakness is, I don't like it to the body. No one likes it to the fucking body. Literally, I don't know where this has come from.
There's one fighter in boxing.
One likes it.
One fighter.
Fury is a good body puncher. He's a good body puncher.
There's one fighter in boxing history who didn't mind getting hit to the body. It was Rocky Marciano.
Yeah. He was made of something a little bit different. Usyk certainly is durable to the head. The way I see it, AJ hit him pretty frequently to the body. He got his attention, sure. Yeah. Now Fury is going to be able to hit him more due to leveraging his gifts, and if we think he can land on Usyk, he should be able to land more consistently. AJ's quite robotic, and he managed to land sometimes, but he really had to try. Fury's a more effortless fighter, but AJ's definitely a harder puncher. Now that sort of goes against what I've said in terms of it's not always the big puncher that stops you. That's absolutely fine. I agree. There's definitely, I think, a better chance of Fury stopping Usyk than AJ, because I think he's going to be able to hit him a bit more consistently and show him different looks and tire him out as well. But and I know people are going to say, wow, everything you said about Fury, that's true for Usyk. He's never faced anyone with a tank like Fury. He's never faced anyone that's fast like Fury, etc. Even though I don't think that's necessarily true. But the way I see it, to easily summarise, and a too long didn't read kind of fashion, often the old adage in boxing is a good big one beats a good little one. I think that Fury is a great big one, but I think Usyk's a very, very special, and I don't think he's a little one. I think he's a perfectly sized heavyweight, perfectly primed to tackle Fury, and as you both have said, he's just very consistent. I don't know why, but I always worried about Usyk, and my rant, I promise, is about to be over, but as I said, this is an important fight for me. I've always worried about Usyk against lesser opponents than Tyson Fury, but for some reason I have this moment of clarity now, and I just think, why do I worry about him? He's the most dependable fighter in all of combat sports. Yeah, he's always shows up. I think there's probably one fight of his, or maybe two, where he wasn't great, and that was against Witherspoon, who he knew was nowhere near his level, and I think he didn't really want to hurt him. And he said that about AJ. I let him off the hook, he said, in that first fight. I let him off the hook. He didn't in the second fight. And Chisora, I think Usyk was coming off an injury, but people say, oh yeah, Chisora was robbed in that fight. I don't know what fight they were watching. Usyk still clearly won that fight. And as I said, Chisora, much later on, still gave Fury a couple of half-decent rounds in their third fight. So, for me, I just think Usyk's perfectly primed, and he's exactly the kind of consistent fighting machine that stress Fury out. And I just think, I think he's going to tire him out. I think he's going to put the pressure on him. I think Fury's going to unravel, and I can see maybe a knockdown. They won't pull him out, but I can see Fury just getting dishevelled as the fight goes on. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean,
ran over.
It tracks with the with what we saw in that piss poor Ngannou performance as well.
Ngannou fight.
That I think Fury was very much underprepared and overlooked what he would have to deal with. But you did see him, because of that, put into a situation where he felt like he didn't have a safe place to go. Yeah, and it kind of just wrought havoc on his game. He just never really looked comfortable or was able to settle in. And fortunately for him, Ngannou doesn't have a great gas tank and is not consistent as an attacker. Usyk is a machine, man. He's super, super consistent and constantly tricky. He's just like, he has that focus that really, really great competitors have, where he is just locked in for the entirety of the fight, calculating, watching your reactions, adjusting at all times. Not even a lot of really good fighters actually can do it as consistently as Usyk does. So, it makes a lot of sense to me.
But may the best man.
May the best man.
I could be terribly wrong, and it is to do with, I just want to say, it is to do with Fury's recent form. As you guys said, it always would have been a tricky fight for him. But if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, say after the second Wilder fight, I would have said ebb and flow, certainly at times, or styles would be similar. The ebb and flow would be closer as the fight went on. I probably would have picked Fury by a close competitive decision. So definitely, could I say definitely again? It is definitely inspired, this pick, by Fury's recent form, which I think tracks as being quite poor for the last couple of fights. I don't agree with my good friend, the esteemed Rob Tebber, on the Dillian White fight. I think Fury is pretty sharp in that, but certainly the third Chisora fight, I don't think he looked very good at all. And again, gun. It was not his performance. It was his reaction. That's what concerned me. When the going got tough, he didn't want to do it, and that ain't the Tyson Fury I know.
Yeah. All right. Well, intended on a quicker breakdown, still a different breakdown from the one we all three gave over on Combat Chronicles, which I heartily encourage you to check out. But Jesus Christ, we talked about that for like 40 minutes. So let's call it a wrap on segment 1. When we come back, we will bid Kyle adieu, and Phil and I are going to talk about Edson Barboza versus Lerone Murphy. We're probably going to talk about Derek Lewis, I guess, and a couple of the others.
Are we?
Well, what else is there?
Talk about the Cuban Taekwondo guy instead. He was fucking awful. That's great.
Oh, we're definitely going to talk about that.
That's the future MMA Depressos episode. Fantastic.
We're definitely going to talk about that and how pissed off Dana White was. Like, I thought this guy was good, and he lost, and now I'm mad. By the way, I don't give in to my emotions. I'm Dana White, alpha male. So we're going to talk about all of that after this. Kyle, thank you so very much for your time. We're going to have Kyle on next week. Prepare for probably an even longer breakdown, but we're going to have a lot to say once Fury Usyk is actually on the table and ready to dissect. So we look forward to having you back, Kyle, and thank you for your time.
Thanks for your time, guys. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, for anyone who didn't get that, it's Combat Chronicles podcast. And just want to say, if you're not sure about buying the fight based on our recommendation, the undercard's really good as well. That's the one good thing about sport washing by Saudi Arabia. You get good undercards as well. So really is a fantastic card, which for the Yanks will be on at a very appreciable time.
Yeah. Nice afternoon fight card. Love that.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. We'll be back just after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are back to the safe zone, the comfort, the warm, fuzzy comfort of mixed martial arts to talk about this upcoming weekend's fight night main event. In fact, the last fight night of the month. We're getting a week off from the UFC in the lead up to UFC 302. But in the meantime, we're back at the Apex. Most of the card is dog shit, but we do have a pretty good main event, I gotta say. Edson Barboza, definitely old, but also showing some real veteran savvy and class in his last fight against Sadiq Yusuff. And he is serving as the barometer for, I don't even know, it's not really fair to call Lerone Murphy a prospect any longer. He's 32 years old, and he has now had 5 or 6 fights in the UFC. And has already fought some very good guys, but this certainly seems like his opportunity to get a name win and like the kind of matchup which will lead to more ranked fights in the future if he wins it. So, I'll be a little sad if Barboza loses, but I think this is a reasonable way to use a name like Barboza.
Yeah. And yeah, this one feels like a bit like a more volatile version of the pick that we were forced to make for Martinez versus Alno. Because I look at Lerone Murphy and I see a very good fighter. He is a good wrestler, he is a good grappler, he has power, he has accuracy, he has good instincts. I do not look at Lerone Murphy and think, this is a man with the style I expect to beat Edson Barboza. Like, he is not... He 100% could beat Edson Barboza.
Barboza is not. He's not quite Jose Aldo.
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing: is that this is one of those things where, like, Barboza has a number of style matchups for him, which are simply poison in a way which Jose Aldo didn't. This is the difference between being, an all-time great and just being an all-time very, very good fighter. And also, even within that, Barboza's margins are thinner because he's simply not as good defensively and he's not as durable as Jose Aldo for his weight class, or just probably just in general.
Yeah.
Is Donald Cerrone a terrible style matchup for Edson Barboza? Not really. Did Donald Cerrone just outright finish him? Yes, he did.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of it's definitely not one of these things where you're like, this guy only loses to bad style matchups and always wins the good ones. It's simply not the case for Edson Barboza. But he is still very style dependent and he is still very good. So, I mean, that Sadiq Yusuff thing, that Sadiq Yusuff fight, again, as you said, like an incredible veteran performance, one of my favorites of like last year.
Yeah, for sure.
Was it last year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was a real feel good fight for the lovers of crusty old vets.
Yep. Because it's, Edson Barboza is someone who often had to like dictate the paces of fights, not being able to do that and instead having to work his way back into it. It's him working his way back in with like a real dedication to like body work, just, sapping away at the younger man. Is everything you want to see from a crafty vet. And, everything that might make you want to say, if you're Edson Barboza against Lerone Murphy, it makes you think, is Lerone Murphy going to be another one of these people who kind of sits at a distance and tries to pot shot with Edson Barboza? Because that simply doesn't work. But
except when it does.
Yeah, but the other thing is that obviously in that fight, Edson Barboza was incredibly close to being absolutely smoked instantly.
Yeah.
There's the alternate timeline of that fight is simply that Edson Barboza got dusted in round one and we were all like, well, he's done now.
Yep.
And it was that timeline was inches away.
Yeah, on a couple different occasions in the first round.
Yeah.
Part of it, I think, was one thing I believe you sort of alluded to before, that Yusuff did have for about 6 minutes exactly the right style matchup idea for Edson Barboza. That was a part of that. He put a ton of pressure on him. He cut him off. He forced him into the exaggerated, inoffensive, by which I mean impotent footwork, and just crushed him while he was stuck on the back foot. And that is, to the extent that there is a style matchup or two that is really truly poisonous to Barboza, that's what it looks like.
Yep.
But Yusuff couldn't stick to it, in part because he's Sadiq Yusuff and he's like always really strong early and not always super consistent late. And in part because Barboza, after surviving, did make some really good adjustments. He started standing his ground more. He realized he could welcome Yusuff into the clinch rather than just trying to create space every time he came forward. After that, he started actually building some pressure of his own, and he was really, really consistent with the body work. And really just dragged himself back into that fight. But part of that was Yusuff as well. I think a more consistent, focused fighter might have been able to make a couple adjustments and keep the round one game plan going in some way. Whereas for Yusuff, it basically totally fell apart at the first sign of resistance. I don't know that Murphy is ever really a great game planner. Like ever?
Nope.
He's a fighter. He comes into a fight, I think, as a guy who just thinks he's going to figure it out as it goes. And so far in the UFC, he has done that, except when he had a really rough start against Zubaira Tukhugov and had to fight his way back only to get a split draw. And then quite recently, he actually had a super close fight at range with Gabriel Santos. Super close. And Santos is a pretty, I don't want to say standard as if to say he's not a skilled and clever striker, because he is. But, you know, a pretty in form, run-of-the-mill, like Brazilian kickboxer type. And Murphy fought him largely at range, could not actually change the momentum of the fight significantly when he did find the clinches. Despite being a good wrestler, it's not like that's a phase where he's gonna like punish you for committing yourself entirely to takedown defense. He's not much of an offensive like stand-up clinch fighter. And so then they just ended up getting back to range over and over, and Santos was super competitive. Murphy never really found a way to box Santos out of the fight, to overwhelm him with pressure. He is much more a tactical fighter than he is any kind of strategist.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps that he's a beast. He's very fast. He's powerful. He's super tough. He's had several serious comeback performances in the UFC. But he has so many of them because he tends to kind of start slow and unsure of what his plan is. He has to find it.
Yeah, he fights like he's never seen his opponent before. And he's just going to hang out with them and see what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has a classic sort of poor round one against McLachlan and Mekani.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, I see, this guy goes for takedowns, and then melts him with a knee in the second.
Yep.
Yeah, he has a slow-paced, medium-paced kickboxing match with Santos. Sort of similar kind of thing with Josh Kulabau. Yeah, he's just a guy who just fights with people in whatever area that they want to have. More than this, he's not someone who tends to even particularly like drown people with pace. I don't know if he's ever cracked 100 strikes.
Good question.
Yeah,
I feel like that Santos fight must have been close. Let me find out.
93, apparently.
Okay. Thrown or landed?
Landed.
Yeah. I mean, he's a reasonably paced fighter when in longer fights. You know, it's not slow, but yeah, he's not an overwhelming volume puncher.
Yeah, and as you said, it's not any kind of strategic choice.
Right.
He did that because he was responding to the pace that Santos set. Yeah. He would respond to both like the tempo and the phase that the opponent wants. And this has typically been utter suicide against Edson Barboza.
Yeah.
Like, Dan Hooker is probably the most notable example.
Anthony Pettis ages ago, but still one of my
Yep.
favorite fights. That one I love, of course, because I picked the upset correctly. But unlike Fury Klitschko, does not turn into absolute shit the moment you try to rewatch it. It's still a great performance. Yeah, basically anybody who just concedes to having an open space fight, which is what Barboza suckered Usyk into after the first round, and you saw what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, again, this the margins are wide for Barboza. You know, I mean, it's like what's his face, Saki guy who's bad, who fought Barboza, who just backed up to the Kent. Who's named a middle kick after himself, Giga Chikadze.
Oh, okay. All right, okay. I was thinking who's sucky and bad. I actually should have been thinking who does Phil hate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But, he had a fight where he broadly fought from range and backed up a bunch, gave Barboza open space and still won it. But he won it because he just landed one big stupid shot and he's an idiot.
And I would say that was pretty dicey, actually. Barboza was finding some good shots. It was also, despite being a long-range fight, it was largely Giga pressuring. It was a long-range fight, but it's certainly more so than like round 2, 3 of the Usyk fight. Barboza spent a lot of time with his back against the fence.
Yeah.
And that's where he got into trouble.
I mean, in round, the fight, well, again, like the Usyk fight, it was turning around for, like, Barboza was, the fight was finished with Chikadze being backed up against the cage because he wasn't doing that anymore.
Yeah. Barboza was starting to solve him and then just got clipped.
Yep. So yeah, I think it's one of those ones where you can't like confidently pick Barboza because there's just always a chance that he's just going to get melted.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays. He's just like getting more and more frail. And at some point, you're just going to have to pick him to get melted every time he goes up against a powerful fight like this.
Yeah.
And honestly, we're getting close to that point, and I can't fault anyone who's just like, Edson Barboza is not going to beat this level of athlete anymore because, yeah, Yusuf had more strategic adaptability than Lerone Murphy probably does. Had the better ideas, but Yusuf is also simply just like chinnier and has less of that clutch factor. Like he's less of a winner than Lerone Murphy is.
Yes. And it's a tricky thing to talk about strategic adaptability. Like, I think we saw there that like Yusuf can come in with ideas, but he is in a way that is typical for lots of fighters. If it's a new idea that is not necessarily the kind of standard thing he wants to do, it doesn't really stick.
Mm-hmm.
He really did despite having all the right ideas, once they started to get pushed back, he couldn't come up with the new wrinkles he needed to keep them working, and they just, that whole fight is very different after the first round. Very different. Yep. Murphy's not going to have that strong start. He's probably going to have to deal with a ton of savagely fast kicks and weird, tricky counter left hooks and body shots. But I am going to pick Lerone Murphy because while I agree, I think this is not a style matchup that Barboza has typically struggled with. Murphy does have clutch factor. Murphy is a really focused fighter, even if he doesn't come in with a good game plan, all the way to the end of the fight. Like third round against Gabriel Santos, he did become much more of a volume fighter. He started staying longer in the pocket. He had, by that point, gotten a read on what counters were coming back at him, and he was throwing longer combinations and just spending more time in a range where he was increasingly effective. And I just think, like you said, like Chikadze, his game plan was falling apart, but he was still there. It was still dangerous. If Yusuf had a little bit more of that ability, might he not have there were a lot of shaky moments for Barboza right up until the end of that fight where he was just putting himself in really awkward positions, ending up standing really tall in the pocket, a lot of near misses. I just think a sharper, more consistent tactical fighter who is also really fast and really powerful is going to continue to be there and continue to be a problem. That Barboza's chin is an issue throughout the fight.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think it might just be a dynamism thing. It might just be that, there is simply that maybe we have passed that point. And it's simply if people have a certain level of power, a certain level of explosiveness, you just have to pick them to beat Edson Barboza because they're gonna either, you can either be sure that they're gonna, you either know that they're gonna finish him or they're gonna hurt him badly enough to have at least cemented a round.
Yeah.
And yeah, because Barboza lost to Giga Chikadze, who sucks. He's really bad.
But a lot of it really does depend on how badly Murphy pays for his characteristically slow starts. Like,
yeah,
as you said, like Dan Hooker, he didn't get away with not putting the right pressure on Barboza immediately. His body was destroyed. His legs were ripped to shreds. Like Barboza will put such quantity of attritive damage on you, of attrition on you, that you just might not have the ability to be fresh and continue adapting and responding. You let Barboza have the first round, that is often a really, really terrible idea. So
yeah,
I get it. I like the Barboza pick. I'm just gonna make a youth pick on this one.
I think I'm probably gonna agree with you. He lost Giga Chikadze, who's really bad.
That's the main reason.
Yeah.
All right. Well, both of us picking Murphy. Phil a little more reluctantly than me, but me, also. Again, I think we might see some really cool shit from Barboza in this fight, and it might be the kind of cool shit that you just don't recover from. So,
yeah,
Murphy's good, but he's formless, and that could be a problem.
Yeah, I think he's the best fighter that I can see Barboza beating him.
Yeah, exactly.
In a lot of ways, it really lines up with him in a lot of ways. But I just think that there might just be a level that Barboza simply can't hit anymore.
Yeah. All right, well, let's take one more break there. When we return, heavyweights.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Okay, Derek Lewis, Rodrigo Nascimento. Derek Lewis and who, you say? That's also what the live audience was thinking. Who the fuck is this guy? And, yeah. Really, really stupid fight. I gotta say, I think, by Derek Lewis standards, Derek looked quite good.
Mm-hmm.
He looked in good health. He looked pretty spry and quick. He, handled the ground pretty well. I was honestly not sure that any of those rounds were very clear wins for Nascimento.
No.
Nascimento's best work was when he got some significant top time in round one. And then Derek Lewis just God, he's no Jailton Almeida, Rodrigo, because he got hit with the stupidest sweep imaginable. The same shit that works for Derek Lewis in every fight, where he was full mounted, eyes closed, just finding his waterfall. And he's like, okay, I'm going to roll over now. He didn't even trap the arm. He didn't even control a wrist and then hit the hip bump to make sure it would actually sweep Nascimento. Nascimento just lost his balance and ended up on the bottom right at the end of that round. And that was his best work of the fight, was the shots he landed before that incredibly stupid thing happened. And then otherwise, Nascimento was just ineffectual on the feet.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the ones where it was just is this guy the style matchup that beats Derek Lewis? No, he isn't. Is he going to try and take him down? Yes, he is. Is that going to probably contribute to his eventual doom by just tiring him out? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We know what you need for Derek Lewis. You need serious power on the feet. Well, you just need power.
Yeah.
You just need finishing ability, serious finishing ability anywhere. You might be Sergey Spivak, but as long as you've got an actual dangerous submission game, you can just take Derek Lewis out instantly. But if your whole thing is I'm going to somehow control the fight and, win a decision, it's even Volkov couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was a card for the next generation of heavyweights, giving us, I hope the UFC might have hoped that they would have some sort of path moving forward from this kind of lineup. But no, got Rodrigo Nascimento, who looked coming into this fight like he was just a guy, and comes out of it looking like he was a guy. We had Alonzo Menafield being incredibly stupid, and of course Waldo Cortes-Acosta, one of the most boring heavyweights I've ever seen, easily beating Cyril Gahn from Wish.
Yeah, so there's not much more to say about Lewis. One thing I'll say is that it was pretty funny to hear his corner being like, we want punches 4, 5, and 6, Derek.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, Derek will throw those combinations. He did a little in round 2 when his opponent's totally overwhelmed and he's trying to finish them.
Yeah.
But it is kind of funny, like, most of the time, when is Derek Lewis ever... He's not putting a left hook behind the right hand, folks. He's rarely putting a jab before the right hand. It's usually a left hook and then a right hand, which is in fact the combination that ended the fight. But that's really all I have to say about it. Derek Lewis is powerful and dangerous, and people exhaust themselves trying to grapple him, and if that's all they have, then they're going to lose.
Yep.
Let's talk about the main card opener heavyweights while we're on the subject. I was heartened to see that apparently many other people, like our friend Dan Tom, also loathes Waldo Cortes-Acosta. It's not just me. I've felt alone. Like since I hate this guy like you hate Giga Chikadze. He's
do you know why I haven't hated Waldo Cortes-Acosta?
I have a feeling I know, but tell me.
Because I never watch his fights.
Yeah, because it's hard to hate who. Yeah. Well, now let me tell you something right now, Phil. This was easily his most entertaining fight yet in the UFC.
Amazing.
Easily. He is, yeah. And also, like, the one where, like, all of his, like, sneering and posturing felt the most appropriate, because, like, it actually worked on his incredibly one-dimensional opponent. Typically, he's doing all of this while nothing is happening. And it's incredibly annoying to watch just seconds just slowly dripping off the clock while Cortes-Acosta is walking around being, like, acting like he's the coolest fighter. Like he's God's gift to combat sports. I hate him. He has just terrible vibes. Terrible, terrible vibes. We should bring back the worst vibe of the year award for this.
The Spike Carlisle award.
Yeah, the Spike Carlisle. Well, we've got him and as clearly the front runner, and then of course Roman Dolidze is still kicking around. I got a couple of thoughts on these motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is always funny to see to find out after the fact that like Dana White was personally invested in a result.
Yeah.
He takes to the mic to start whining, and, you know, like a good promoter does, he starts just absolutely shitting on the guy who won the fight.
Yep.
Really good. That's what you do when you're trying to build a fighter. Not that I want to see Cortes-Acosta built, but as somebody said to me on Twitter, like I think they phrased it, local moron tells fighters that they lose half their pay if they don't win, hates watching them try not to lose.
Yep.
Like it worked for Cortes-Acosta. He's like, oh, literally any wrestling at all? And this gigantic Cuban Taekwondo stylist just shuts down? I'm going to try any wrestling at all as my game plan. You can't hate him for that. The guy you wanted to win sucks. Sorry.
Yeah. Obviously, White is more angry at himself for being stupid than he is for anything else. It's the fact that he's like, man, what did I think was going to happen here?
The only reason he said anything is because he had an expectation. That's the only reason he ever has one of these tirades, because he's disappointed.
Yeah.
And, of course, he was on Twitter this week with some clip of him that Gray Maynard was roasting.
Yeah.
Talking about how he's an alpha male who doesn't give in to his emotions. I guess this is the thing with these types is they don't really see being mad as an emotion. They're like, women are so emotional, they cry. That's an emotion. Me being pissed constantly all the time, that's not feelings. That's manly.
Yes, me complaining for like really long periods of time on a podcast or an interview is in fact stoicism.
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with emotions, folks. Everybody has them. But that includes Dana White. Whatever incredible.
I'm watching Waldo Cortes-Acosta's ground and pound at the end of round 1, I think it is. Is it round 1 or round 2? And there's just a point where it looks like he's just like very gently playing Despaigne like an instrument. It's like the old who was it? Thiago.
Thiago Silva.
Thiago Silva, yeah. It's like the bongos thing that he did with Paul Brandon Vera, but he's not actually trying to do it. He's not miming playing the bongos.
Yeah, he's not just having a laugh.
He's simply like he's trying to find some way to do ground and pound, but in fact looks like he's actually just playing Rebellis Despaigne like a xylophone.
Badly like a xylophone. Yeah. Rebellis Despaigne. I'm sorry that you got so worked up because you were hoping he would be great. Like maybe you should have known that you're gigantic. Obviously, the man has talent. He's huge. He hits like a truck. He can kick. For a guy that size, he can kick fast. Like that. Those are good things. But how dumb do you have to be surprised that this Taekwondo Olympian who's been knocking everyone out instantly has no idea what to do on the ground? Is this literally your first time thinking about a heavyweight MMA fighter, Mr. White? How misguided can you be?
I like the way that he has Cyril Gane's punching form when Cyril Gane is finishing someone, but he has it all the time.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He must be good. Yeah, no. He clearly has potential, but as I was saying to Zane this week, I just think he sucks, Rebellis Despaigne. He just visibly sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't like seeing Waldo Cortes-Acosta be the one to do it, but he certainly made that point loud and clear.
Yeah, it's like, what's it called? In fact, he reminds me of Ruziboev, the guy that Buckley was fighting.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
The co-main, in that he's got a style which is not good, but is obviously going to beat a ton of people.
Right. Yeah, I actually picked Ruziboev in that one, thinking he, as we saw at points, that Buckley was just going to blast forward very obviously from super long range and just get run into an uppercut, which Ruziboev throws well. As it turned out, Ruziboev has a disappointingly typical idea of what it means to fight a southpaw, which Buckley wisely decided to be southpaw the entire fight. And Ruziboev didn't throw anything except single right hands, be they uppercuts, straights, or overhands. That's all he could think of. And even Joaquin Buckley is not predictable enough to just walk into the same punch thrown over and over and over again with no setup and no follow-up. So I think that was really a credit to Buckley, but really just Ruziboev has been a can crusher most of his career. Me and Zane were talking about this. We were kind of aware that his game was really very shallow while very dangerous in that one layer. But Buckley found a way to just sort of neutralize that one layer, and then Ruziboev had nothing.
Yep. I mean, this resembled like an early God of War boss fight more than anything else. Just like one giant guy, and then he would just light up and then swing the right hand, and Buckley would scoot out of range.
Yeah.
I kind of feel for Ruziboev, to be honest, because this is someone, it looked like someone doing a favor for the UFC, taking a fight that they shouldn't when asked to. because I think this was A, short notice, and B, I'm pretty sure all of his fights in the UFC have been at middleweight. And normally, when you do this kind of slightly short notice, putting fights together and so on, it's the other way around. You get people from the weight class above people from the weight class below to come up, because then they won't have to cut the weight.
Yeah.
I don't know what's one of the biggest, he was just one of the biggest welterweights I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's 6'5". He's not particularly skinny with it. And I felt sort of sorry for him because he had an incredibly simplistic game, but also I just don't know. I don't think that's, there's any, don't think that he actually does secretly have a super deep game, but also he didn't exactly put himself in the best position by having to cut, presumably 200 pounds or whatever it was to actually make the weight class.
Yeah, he has bounced around a bit throughout his career, again, largely against cans, but he's been at middleweight for a while, and certainly for his entire UFC career. I didn't even consider that aspect of it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, I hope he doesn't stay at welterweight. But yeah, as I said, even if he does, simply being, again, one of the biggest welterweights I've ever seen and swinging the right hand a bunch is going to get him a ton of wins.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah. As long as the opponent, even if they're not normally a southpaw, doesn't decide, I'm going to be lefty this fight and reduce him to basically one punch.
Yep.
Yeah, you already mentioned Alonzo Menefield. Zane and I were like, oh, Alonzo's gotten so much more patient, and it's really cool to have seen him sort of, taking this long road to being and then just doing the dumbest thing possible immediately in the fight. The fuck was he thinking?
He's thinking Carlos Ulberg starts slow, and so I need to pressure him really quickly.
Boy, is that an overcorrection.
He doesn't. Carlos Ulberg blows people out of the water instantly. The last thing you should be doing.
I just don't know what he was. He just Menefield. The process of watching Menefield develop has really been one of him being patient. That was how he handled Dustin Jacoby, where Jacoby was way more active and way busier in that fight, but Menefield just thought about his defense, tried to maintain the distance, and caught him with big shots when he needed to. And then he just goes in there against another technical kickboxer type and just falls over throwing the first punch of the fight. I don't know. It was like panic. He must have panicked. I don't know. The nerves got to him or something. It was not the thoughtful Alonzo Menefield I've come to expect at all.
No, Beta Rumble-esque.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's just because Carlos Ulberg was so hot.
Yeah, good damn him.
He knew Dustin Jacoby was a good kickboxer, but he's like, this guy looks like a mechanic.
Yeah.
He steps in there with Carlos Ulberg, shakes his hand backstage, just like, hey, how you doing, mate? And just feels his knees quiver. Oh my God. The hot guy talked to me. And that was it. Couldn't handle it.
Pure panic.
Definitely the coolest fight of the card, and the last one we'll touch on. Carlos Diego Ferreira fought Mateusz. They were saying Rambeski. I'm 100% sure that's not right. I think that's probably like an English speaker's best approximation of the weird nasal vowels that Polish has. It's like Rambeski, probably. Rabeski. I'm just going to say Rabeski. I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm just going to get it deliberately wrong so I don't try. I picked Rabeski for this fight because Carlos Diego Ferreira. What's that?
Explain yourself.
Well, just because Carlos Diego Ferreira is old, and I came in with the simplistic understanding that his gas tank is not really a strength anymore. We have seen it catastrophically fail him in several fights. And I also thought he looked really shaky early against Michael Johnson. and was kind of fortunate to find the knockout punch when he did, because that fight was not going his way. And so, yeah, broadly, I was thinking slow start, can't sustain against an unsubmittable tank like Rubeski, who's really strong, really powerful, super durable, and just incredibly difficult to out-grapple, and never ends up in trouble on the ground. It just looked like a bad matchup. Turns out you probably actually have to out-grapple Carlos Diego Ferreira, or make him work a ton at least on the ground to get him to gas. The gas tank was not a problem at all. There were few grappling exchanges. When they did occur, man, I love watching Ferreira use jiu-jitsu to out-wrestle people. Good wrestlers get on top of him, and he just really quickly finds a butterfly hook, gets a strong grip, and sweeps them. Or creates just enough of a sweep to then do a technical stand-up. He links together his scrambling and get-up ideas so smoothly. And every time Rubeski got him down, it was a joy to watch Carlos immediately create enough space to get back to his feet. There wasn't a single secured position from Rubeski in this fight. And none of these were long enough grappling exchanges to tax Ferreira's gas tank.
Yeah, and also they were definitely long enough to tax Rubeski, who was going full bore, throwing every power shot as hard as he could from the start of the fight, and was knackered by round 2. Yeah,
Rubeski, I think, is very much of the school of thought that it's okay if I get tired as long as the other guy gets more tired. And I think that usually takes care of itself, because he's just like a bulldog. And he probably thought it was going to go that way, because he dropped Ferreira near the end of the first round, went completely apeshit trying to finish him, even though he was getting pretty effectively controlled with Ferreira's guard. And Ferreira just was not tired after that onslaught. He was certainly not more tired than Rubeski. In fact, his boxing became very, very sharp the slower Rubeski got. He started finding his jab and finding the right hands and left hooks off of that, putting together really nice, smooth combinations, closing the distance with the first punch, maybe throwing away the second punch or landing it and then tossing in a feint and finding the third punch, really stacking the layers up on Rubeski. Yeah. Whose face started to turn into a horrible, horrible mask of swelling, and I don't care what the doctor said. Rubeski could not see out of his right eye in the third round of this fight. The fight should have been stopped for that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the best pressuring performance I've seen from Carlos Diego Ferreira basically since Tysonov.
Yeah.
In terms of, staying over his own feet, not getting crazy with it, just building up on the lead and just sticking consistently to it. Never letting Rubeski off the hook.
Is this post USADA Carlos Diego Ferreira, Phil? Any possibility of that, since we've been thinking about it?
It could be.
I mean, the man's on some tran or epinephrine or whatever the fucking thing is called that is known for giving you incredible stamina. Not getting taxed much in the grappling might be part of it. That has been a common ingredient in all of his gassing performances, but also, who knows?
Yeah, maybe. And I wouldn't put it past. I wouldn't put it past any MMA fighter, basically.
Yeah.
But amazing performance, incredible to see. Absolutely baffling. I was thinking, even at the time, I was they were saying that he was a plus 400 underdog or something, and I was like, those are the kind of odds you give to champions who are fighting Carlos Diego Ferreira.
Yeah.
I don't think there's more than 4 people in the lightweight division that I would give those kind of odds over Carlos Diego Ferreira. There's probably quite a few that I would pick to beat him.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. For just like a good potent fighter to go up against CDF.
Yeah. Carlos Diego Ferreira, a super tough, super well-rounded, and dangerous fighter, like with a ton of high-level experience. I fully agree. Plenty of fights I'd pick him to lose. Maybe fewer after seeing him look like this. But no way Ruziboev should have been that heavily favored. And it was good. You know, whatever you want to say about, and eventually we're just going to stop talking about it because we get bored of bringing it up. But whatever you want to say about fighters in the no longer drug monitored era of the UFC, you know, it's a powerful chemical advantage to have. It doesn't make you good at fighting. And you will reach a point where you have lost other, sometimes more ephemeral things that no amount of, if we're supposing, for example, that RDA was on something, maybe old man RDA in that fight against Mateusz Gamrot had a really strong start, knocked down Gamrot like basically anybody good does. It still fucking fell apart under pressure. He still couldn't, his reaction times weren't there to deal with the multitude of threats coming his way. He was still an old fighter. Carlos Diego Ferreira looked sharp. Mentally. He looked focused. These are things that you don't get from steroids. Whatever help he may have had with his gas tank purely. And again, we have no idea. But he looked sharp. He looked like he did 5 years ago. They're responding to things, making adjustments, just expertly dealing with threats on the ground. And when he had the momentum, completely overwhelming Ruziboev on the feet with precision volume boxing. There's nothing artificial that can really contribute to whether or not you can show a game like that. So, full marks to Carlos Diego Ferreira. I loved seeing him win like that and against such long odds. I have always enjoyed watching him fight, but it was really cool to see him delivering a performance that I really didn't think he was capable of any longer.
Yeah. I know you said it was just the last thing, but I will also say that Caceres-Woodson was great.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Just like, I think, in fact, it really like showed off the best of both men in a lot of ways. You know, Woodson got to show, you know, how slick he can be, how defensively responsible, how he can like line up good shots. And I think, you know, for Caceres, it was one of those ones where like a lot of his fights, you can criticize him for just kind of giving them away and not doing much. You just can't do that here. He was going for it the whole time. It was, you know, there was no posturing, no, you know, pointless high fives or...
Yeah.
You know, he was aggressive and consistent and went to the body and like, yeah, it was close and competitive and great fight.
It was a very serious professional Alex Caceres.
Yeah.
Who really pushed Woodson to his limit. Yeah, agreed. All right, well, let's wrap it up there. You know, a lot of different interesting fights. More than anything, looking forward to Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk this weekend. And again, we are going to have our dear friend Kyle back on for a nice in-depth breakdown of whatever crazy shit happens in that boxing ring this Saturday. So make sure you join us for that. I will also tell you that coming up very soon, in fact, I think tomorrow, maybe the day that you're hearing this, the May Basho is taking place. That is the bi-monthly sumo tournament. And so we are going to be having Miguel Class back on the Patreon this month for a series that I've decided we're calling Heavy Henka, which is a joke that only makes sense if you follow sumo, but I swear it does make sense, where we're going to talk about one of our favorite non-MMA niche combat sports. We had a great time sort of introducing a lot of listeners, I think, to that last time, and it seemed like it got a good response, so I look forward to making it a regular thing just getting to watch 15 days straight of high-level sumo 6 times a year. What's not to like? So check out patreon.com/heavyhands. Also, head over to my Substack, facepunching.substack.com. And that is it. We will talk to you next week. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.